Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to hand over to Leonard there from the Tax Shop Accountants, who is going to tell us a bit more about tax incentives pertaining to solar in South Africa. So thank you, Leonard. I'm looking forward to what you have to say.
Thanks, Danae. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So the question is, how can I maximize the deduction in income tax with solar assets? And we will be talking about how you can do that in these slides. Essentially, there's two ways, one for businesses, Section 12BA, and one for individuals, which is called Section 6C. Firstly, who am I? I'm Leonard Mathieu. I'm the Managing Director of the Tax Shop Accountants in Plattekloof. I have 15 years experience in audit, accounting, tax and advisory. I'm registered professional tax practitioner, SA, and I make life easier. So let's get into it. Solar tax rebate Section 12BA for businesses. So what is this tax rebate exactly? So what it does is the deduction amounts to 125% of the cost of the qualifying solar assets used in the generation of electricity. Question 2 is, what are the qualifying solar assets? So 12BA includes quite a few expenses. It's the foundation or supporting structures, cost of all PV panels and parts, the voltage solar cells and panels, bidirectional utility meter, AC inverters, batteries, power optimizers, DC boxes and feeder lines, DC combiner, racking cables, wiring, planning, installation, and delivery cost of these items. So you can see it's quite an extensive list of things that's included in, or expenses that's included in 12BA. Just to note that standalone batteries and inverters not used with solar panels will not qualify as they do not generate electricity. Okay, so let's look at some examples. On the 1st of March 2024, a business buys a solar asset at 10 million rand. So what deduction can be claimed? 125% of 10 million is 12.5 million can be claimed as a deduction for income tax. In example 2, on 1 September 2024, a business buys a solar asset at 1 million. Again, 125% qualification there, so 1.25 million can be claimed as a deduction. So what are requirements for claiming this deduction? The solar asset must be brought into use for the first time on or after 1 March 2023 and before 1 March 2025. It must be new and unused. The 12BA deduction must be claimed in the year of assessment when the solar assets are brought into use for the first time. Section 12BA also applies to the lessor who installs qualifying assets that are brought into use by the lessor's lessee. However, the lessor's deduction will be limited to the rental income under Section 23A. The owner of the solar system assets will claim the 12BA deduction against electricity sold in the power purchase agreement and other trading income. And just important to note, the 12BA deduction does not have an electricity generation limit. So what happens when you dispose or sell this asset? So if you sell this asset or dispose of it before 1 March, and you've claimed previously that 125% deduction, then an enhanced recoupment of the BA deduction will occur. So if sold at or above cost, the recoupment will be equal to the full BA deduction. Or if you have sold it below cost, the recoupment will be 125% of the proceeds received. So essentially, you're giving back the 25%. What happens on or after 1 March 2026, the recoupment will be equal to or the lesser of the proceeds received on 12 BA deduction, which means the 25% will become a permanent deduction. And I've worked on some examples for that as well. So example 3 says on 1 September 2025, a business sells a solar asset at 800,000. The initial cost was 1 million, and it was within the window, and that was 1 September 2024. So previously they could deduct 1.25 million on this, and now because it's sold before 1 March, you need to include, you know, the 800,000 times 125%. So 1 million rand will be recouped. Then example 4, this is 1 September 2026. So remember, this is after 1 March 2026. 1 March 2026. A business sells a solar asset at 800,000, so it's the same amount. The initial cost is 1 million, same amount. It was within the window. They deducted 1.25 million for tax, and now 100 times. So they won't be allowed to claim the 125%. It's only 100% that will need to be recouped. So 800,000 will be given back as income to SARS. The question becomes, what happens after the window closes? 28 February 2025, meaning 21 March 2025. So Section 12 BA was just for this 2 years, from 1 March 2023 to 28 Feb 2025. But Section 12B still applies and has been around since 2004 and was updated to include renewable energy generation in 2012. And what Section 12B is all about is there's a 50% deduction in the first year of acquisition or use, 30% in the second year, and 20% in the third year. Section 12B was also updated in 2015 to include solar PV renewable energy generation with a capacity of 1,000 kilowatt or 1 megawatt to enjoy an accelerated depreciation of 1 year or 100%, which means that if the capacity does not exceed 1,000 kilowatt or 1 megawatt, you can still deduct 100% in your very first year of acquisition or use. Otherwise, you default back to the 50, 30, 20. Are there any questions on Section 12BA?
Morning, Leonard.
Good morning.
Hi. Firstly, just thank you for taking the time to speak with us. If I can just ask you, firstly, I think it was the first slide that you shared for us in terms of what qualifies for Section 12BA. I think you had foundations and something else. Would this apply to re-roofing? If, for example, the person had an asbestos roof and needed to include re-roofing, would we be able to include that in the Section 12BA?
That's a very good question, and I will need to have a look into, you know, what the Act defines as planning, installation, and delivery costs. And I am going to make a note of that and just look into the Act and advise on that.
Because I thought perhaps it applied to your first point there, which is foundation or supporting structures.
Yeah, it could also be there. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to just fire off 1 or 2 questions here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Then I understand, obviously, it applies to businesses. What about if the property is owned in a trust? Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, a trust is subject to 45% tax versus a business, which is at 27%. Am I correct in saying that? So it would be
That's
more
correct.
beneficial. So it would be more beneficial if a property was owned in a trust than if it were owned in a business.
Look, it depends on what the trust does. But yeah, I mean, essentially the effective tax rate for a trust is higher. So yeah, it could be more beneficial, but it all depends on, certain other sections as well.
Okay. Then when you said the solar asset needs to be brought into use, meaning
Yeah.
you would have to have, it would need to be, permission received to commission the system. It would need to be switched on, and all the SSEG and all the government permissions received, and the system needs to be operating essentially by the 28th of February 2025. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then I just want to clarify one other thing too. So if there's a property owner who has a tenant in there, so somebody who owns a property, he's leasing it out, he installs solar on, and he starts charging the tenant for electricity. How would that work? Can he still use Section 12BA?
You can still use Section 12BA as long as, I'm just going to move there, as long as the income, let me just see where that is. Wanted to show it on the screen. Anyways, as long as, as long as the deduction is not more than the income. So you will be limited in terms of Section 23, not to deduct more than what your lease actually recovers.
But I mean, say for example, it's your example there of R1 million, which would be 1.25 million. You could reduce your taxable income by, and say the rent is for example purposes 500,000 rand a year. That will stay as a journal entry. You don't have to have that amount of taxable income in the first year. It will just stay as a journal entry, and as you earn money, it can slowly be deducted against that income. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I think what they're trying to do is to limit your look. They're giving you the 125%, but you will be limited in your first year to claim the full 125%. It will only reduce your taxable income to the amount that the rent is received.
Okay.
So you can't exceed that in terms of 26 and 23.
And is that only applicable? So say again, we use the example of a property owner. Is it only applicable to that individual property asset, or what about if they have a portfolio whereby they have income from multiple properties? Can that Section 12 be used to offset your income on another property?
It's always best to get advice on that as well, just to make sure that some things are not ring-fenced. So I am not exactly sure about offsetting other properties against that specific property because of the rental again flowing into that property. However, again, with proper advice and looking at the structure of that business or company, we can advise on that.
Okay. I'm sorry, and I'm giving you a lot of questions here. I'm just going to ask one more. In the case of a farmer where he might be running a business from there, but the farm is owned in in the family's name, would he be able to install a solar system there and then still claim, even though the solar system is essentially on the family farm that's in a different name to the business?
No.
Not okay.
Yeah, look, again, 12B is still there, so we might need to look into farming operations and the 50, 30, 20 or the 100%. But yeah, 12BA might not be applicable in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Just moving along again to that side. Any other questions? Perfect, thank you. Then the next we're getting to the solar tax rebate section 6C for individuals. So did you know about the solar rebate? It was introduced in 2023 by the Minister of Finance in the budget speech. it was financial incentive for individual taxpayers who install solar panels, and the rebate only applies for qualifying solar panels brought into use during the 1st of March 2023 until 29 Feb 2024. So you will notice that that is, earlier this year. So it was only applicable for last year. So who can claim the solar tax incentive? Individuals who pay personal income tax who have installed new and unused PV panels can claim a rebate of 25% of the cost of the panels up to a maximum of 15,000 against their tax liability. So that means that that is the amount that they could claim back into their pockets. This rebate does not apply to solar installation at business premises. As mentioned, 12BA covers that. Then how do I claim the rebate? So if you qualify, you must include the total cost of the PV panels when completing and filing your income tax returns for 2024. So just remember, this is now. The tax season commenced on the 15th of July 2024. It ends in a month's time, October 24, and for provisional taxpayers, it ends the 20th of January 2025. So if you thought that you bought solar panels in the last tax year, ending the 29 Feb 2024, then this is the time to actually claim it on your tax return. So do I qualify? So this, firstly, yes, you need to buy it, or it needs to be unused, new and unused PV panels brought into use from 1 March 2023 to 29 Feb 2024. It must be installed in your primary residence and be used mainly for domestic purposes. The panels must have a minimum capacity of 275 watts per panel, and the panels must be part of a system that is connected to the distribution board of the residence and could have been installed as part of a new installation or in addition to existing solar system. That's just important there. So question becomes, can I claim the solar tax rebate if I'm renting a home? The answer is yes. The rebate does not require property ownership, but obviously only the party who paid for the solar panels can claim the rebate, so it can't be claimed twice. So what is excluded from the cost that is eligible for the solar tax rebate? It does not include the cost of the inverter and batteries, and it applies only to the cost of the PV panels. So some examples again. So solar panels can be claimed for 25% of the cost of the new and unused PV panels up to a maximum rebate of 15,000, as explained before. So in this example, person buys 10 panels at 5,000 rand per panel, totaling 50k. That person can claim for 25% of the cost up to 15,000. So 25% times 50,000 is 12,500 can be claimed. Another example, example 2, a person buys 20 panels at 5,000 rand, so that's totaling 100,000 rand. That person can claim 25% of the cost up to 15,000 rand. So again, 25% times 100,000 equals 25,000. However, your deduction or your claim here will only be limited to 15,000 because that is the limit, and 25,000 exceeds the 15,000. So what documents do I need to claim? So a COC, an invoice, and proof of payment or a payment agreement, proof of ownership if the taxpayer owns the property, or proof of property use like a rental agreement. And I think that's actually that. Any questions on section 6C?
Hi, Leonard. Sorry, one more question from me. How would it work on a rent-to-own option? How is the, say it's a business, how would they be able to claim that, and what is the period that the rental can be? So can you do like a 8-year rental and then still claim Section 12B?
8-year rental and still claim Section 12BA. Yes, I mean, if it's brought into use in that window for the first time, then you own it, you can claim it in that period. Obviously, over time, your income will come into your books. But again, we must just look at Section 23 in terms of the recoverability, because it could be limited to the income.
Okay, why I was asking is I thought that there was possibly a limitation of 5 years, that it had to be a 5-year rent-to-own option. Anything over 5 years, you couldn't deduct. So I just wanted to clarify if you were able to go past 5 years or not.
Yeah,
on a rent-to-own.
I will look into the rent-to-own for past 5 years, and then I will also share that with Zanay.
Thank you very much.
Asked some very good questions this morning.
Okay, any other questions? Cool. Leonard, anything else you want to add?
Nothing from my side. Thank you very much for joining me. Yes, I will definitely, Seth, get back to you with all of your questions that you've asked there, and then Janai can share that with everyone that attended.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Thanks for the questions. And Leonard, thank you for the information provided. We're looking forward to receiving more information. For those externally who joined us today, I will put a link in the chat section where you can find the recording. And then I will also add the presentation as well as the additional information that Leonard will provide us with in that at that link. So before you leave the chat, just quickly grab the link, which I will paste. And yeah, then I want to thank you again, Leonard, and thank everyone for joining. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Zanai. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.